alaikum. So our discussions this Moharram have been based around Surah Al-Asr and what we can learn from it. And we're just going to go back to the recitation of it. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal-Asr. Innal insana fala khusr illa allazina amanu as-salihat wa tawasaw bil-haqq wa tawasaw bis-sabr. So the English translation of this is, by time man is in a state of loss, except those who exhort truth, patience, and those towards good deeds. And on Sunday, we spoke about how time was short, and unless we realize the truth, we men will always be in a state of loss. We then looked at what the truth actually was and what the truth meant. We showed how the truth shows itself in terms of the physical truth and then the spiritual truth. And then we spoke about the Quran and said that this was a type of truth. And as Muslims, we testify it to be true. We now move our reflections on to the last condition of Surah Al-Asr. To remind ourselves, the first condition is to realize the truth. The second condition is to do good deeds. The third condition is to do something with this truth and to inform others of this truth. And the final condition is to be patient. So today's topic is about patience, sabr. So what is patience? Think about circumstances in your own life where you had to be patient. For me, when I'm driving, I have to be very patient. As Uncle knows, that if a car is going at 25 in a 40-mile-per-hour zone, I'm like, come on, man, we've got places to be, people to see, come on. That's an example of when my patience is tested with Zara in the car, but it's not because of Zara, it's because of the 25-mile-per-hour vehicle in front of me. So that's one type of patience. But then there are other types of patience. You've got things in life, tests in life, which test our inner patience. And I was thinking about all the hardships a man could experience, and naturally I just go back to my own patience at work. And I just remember this particular woman who came to see me. She was 35 years old, a new patient, registered into the area, and came with her daughter who was around 4, and she only had a cough. And she was so worried about this cough, and I just couldn't quite understand why she was so worried about something that seemed so simple. So when we delved into the detail, I learned that about a year ago, she lost her son. And it all started with a cough. It turned into a really bad infection, and the child died in A&E. I couldn't imagine the pain or the suffering or the hardship she was going through, and the patience she must have had to endure to go through this. She happened to be a Muslim, and she told me her faith in Allah's plan had allowed her to endure. And bizarrely almost, my last act today was to go on a home visit to see a particular man in a care home who had cancer, and I had to go and give him a morphine injection to alleviate his pain. And in that room there were 2 granddaughters with him. And they were grief-stricken, and they were really struggling, but they were trying to be patient in their own way. But when I was coming here today, I thought, if you don't believe in Allah and His plan, and you don't believe that your soul lived on, and you thought this was it, this earth was it, and there was no akhirah, how difficult would that journey actually be? So it's almost a blessing then as Muslims that we have this faith in the akhirah, which allows us to then try and put things together and reason the journey of the soul. Patience then. So, of all the positive virtues of man, why is it that Allah has defined patience as a key to struggle? And Allah mentions in the Quran patience 90 times. So 90 times He mentions it in the Quran. And you can think of all the other virtues of man. There's lots of virtues of man. We do lots of bad things, but we do lots of good things too. Chastity, so purity, cleanliness. Temperance, showing humanity, so insaniyat. charity. We as Muslims, I think, give a good amount of charity. Diligence, hard work, mehnat, we graft, kindness and humility. But yet Allah chooses to remind us about patience more than any other virtue. And so He tells us in the Quran quite beautifully, quote, so be patient with gracious patience. So then I just wonder, do you think it's easier to be patient today than it was perhaps 100 years ago? Is it harder, do you think, to be patient in this society than others? What are your thoughts?
Yes, it is.
I think it is too. And I remember, in 2000 and on, we all went to India and went to this place near Umrali, and I can't quite remember the name of the place we went to. We turned up to visit this family in the middle of the week. It must have been Wednesday. I can't remember what they did for their business, but I think it was hardware or something, naturally. And quite literally, unannounced, they just shut the shop for the day. We went home, and it literally felt like they had all the time in the world. That was around 20 years ago in India, but I wonder if anybody is able to do that now. And back then as in now, I wondered what it was to be successful, and I thought, maybe to be successful is just like to be one of these guys, to get to a stage in life where, everything's so good that you just shut up shop and go home. So going back to patience, why do you think this is? Why do you think it's so difficult to be patient? There are so many reasons, but there are a couple of reasons which I wish to focus on because I think they are damaging lives right now. Firstly, we live in this information overdrive world. We have apps on our phone which give us rapid and instant feedback about everything, news, weather, everything. We're cluttered with devices which give us information so quickly that we don't even have the time to think about time. The answer that quick, the feedback is that quick. I'm not sure our brains are wired to deal with information like this in such a quick fashion. The second reason I think we might struggle with patience is because our aims, objectives, and pursuits are all skewed. Because if you think about it in this day and age, we're told to pursue happiness. So we end up pursuing happiness, the pursuit of happiness, the constant need to be in a state of happiness or a state of elation or a state of euphoria. The world wants your aims, your objectives, and your missions to be happy. And in that, there's nothing wrong in itself to be happy, absolutely not. But we as humans are brought into this idea that we need to be in a state of perpetual happiness all the time. If you look at social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you just see idealism everywhere. You need to look like this. You need to be like this. You need to dress like this. This is the type of holiday you need to go on. This is where you need to speak. From a very early age, our minds are indoctrinated with these ideas, so we can't become individual within our own selves. So it's like saying, if you don't have this, and you don't have this, and you don't have this, you're not going to be happy. So if you don't drive a Merc, you don't go on holiday, you don't have a big house, all this stuff, you're not going to be happy. There is nothing wrong in being happy, right? But it's the pursuit, the constant striving to be happy that could then cause problems. So as a man, we think if I had more money in our account, if our debts were gone, if this illness was gone, I could be happy. The list just goes on and on and on. So happiness fuels our need to need more and want more. And it's this pursuit which is superficial, fleeting, here one day, gone the next. Sometimes happiness is so weak and futile that it's literally here in a moment and it goes in just a moment. But then we forget the more deeper reasons to live. And sometimes the best lessons are learned from the Quran itself, and the Quran tells us that the stories within it have the deepest meanings and lessons for us. So we read Surah Yasin all the time, right? And there's a story in it where there is a town of men who did not believe in Allah. And they had two messengers, and a third messenger came to it. And the people of the town said that if you keep trying to preach this message to us, we're going to kill you. At this point, a man from the furthermost part of the city comes and says, listen to these messengers because they preach the truth. Now, I find the story fascinating because this man who comes from the furthermost part of the city actually demonstrates every attribute shown in Surah Asr. He knows the truth, he wants to share it, he tries to be patient in doing so. But even more so, ask yourself, do you think this man had any degrees? What prestigious titles did this man have? What reputation did he have? How much money did he have in his account? Was he a king, a queen? Do we know? We don't. But it doesn't matter, because all that mattered that he believed in the truth and was able to tell others about it. In the past there have been kings, queens, masters of philosophy, and people who have done many great things in this world, but the Quran doesn't necessarily remember them. God makes this particular man eternal forever, and that in itself is a really fascinating fact, that Allah makes this man, who no man knows, eternal for men to remember. So I'm going to go back to this concept of happiness, and do you know what the most fascinating thing is do you think the Quran mentions happiness? Any ideas? A few answers? Come on, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, it's fine. Okay, so it doesn't actually. So the Quran does not mention happiness as a concept. But does it mention contentment? Yes. Does it mention peace? Yeah. Does it mention to be in a state of tranquility? Yes. Does it mention that you need to live for a purpose? Yes. You see, the Quran instructs us to dive into a life which is much deeper than this superficial state of happiness that the world around us compels us to live. These, I feel, are the two reasons in today's world it is even more important for us to be patient in this society. Going back to patience then, why do we need to be patient? It is because we as man are always going to have some sort of struggle, whether it's the fight to wake up in the morning, whether it's to sleep on time, whether it's the balance between our work, our children, our life in general, whether we're trying to manage our life with illness, death, financial hardship, whatever. Because Allah tells us that He created man in toil and struggle, and that's every single one of us. I'm sure we've all met people who are in toil and struggle, and sometimes you can see that struggle, so it's obvious to it. Sometimes you can't see it. We don't know what's going on in individual people's lives. There could be many of us here who are going through struggles that none of us are perceptive of. We don't know what hardships we are going to face in the future, but we need to accept this toil, this struggle, because it's not going to go away. Not fight against it with the superficial pursuit of happiness, but the inner spiritual battle of peace, purpose, patience, sabr. Now, just a few more thoughts now. Let's just take the example of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Do you think Imam Hussein alayhi salam was chasing happiness? No. I don't think he was either. Do you think his mind was cluttered with information overdrive? No, I don't think so. I think he had a clear mind. He knew exactly what he wanted to achieve. Do you think he knew what his purpose was?
Yes.
I think he did, absolutely. Do you think that he was in a state of peace and tranquility? Absolutely. Do you think he was worried about the worldly material affairs that we engage our minds in? Isn't it incredible that we hear of someone who is going through the ultimate struggle and the ultimate distress? And I can't think of a moment in all these majlises where I could envisage him to have lost patience. How did he manage to be patient whilst he saw his entire family slaughtered in Karbala? Well, how do you be patient with something like that? What type of patience do you need? My thoughts are that you can only achieve that type of patience when you have a faith in the unseen, a faith in the divine, a faith in the all-knowing, to know that Allah's destiny and plan is greater than anything we could plan for ourselves. Because we as humans only have very limited knowledge, and we know the moment that is now, but beyond now we don't know anything. Allah knows the past, He knows the present, He knows the future. You see, we are under the control of time. Allah controls time and is outside that. So tomorrow I hope to, inshallah, extend this discussion about patience. And we need to know how we can develop patience in toil and struggle. And faith in Allah's plan allows us to be patient. Faith in the truth, inner and outer spiritual reality of things, helps us to manage the difficulties of today and tomorrow. I hope to speak about Allah's plan and how there is always a greater hand and a greater wisdom at play. I want to show through a story how Allah plans for things that we can never be aware of, and how sometimes bad things happen which appear bad to us but are for a greater good. And sometimes how apparently good things happening may not be good for us. I hope to share with you the story, a Quranic story of Musa alayhi salam and Khidr. So naturally through this discourse, one final reflection is that we've shared a couple of Allah's names. We've talked about Ahad, the One, the Eternal, and Samad, the Absolute. And tomorrow, by talking about Allah knowing everything, we're going to come across another name of His, and that's Al-Alim, who is all-knowing. So on that note, I wish to conclude today's discussion. And if you have any questions or feedback, then perhaps we can discuss it and share some thoughts on Saturday when we could just have an open forum discussion maybe. Thank you, inshallah. Khudafis.